Welcome to the Miracles Happen Fertility Podcast, where it's all about using the power of your mind to create hope, health, and miracles on your fertility journey. And now your host, a dash of science and a heap of spirit, Dr. Maria Rothenberger.
Hi there, this is Dr. Maria Rothenberger, your host for the Miracles Happen Fertility Podcast. Welcome to episode 135, where we are going to be talking about whether or not you're highly sensitive or an empath or both. What those mean, what the differences are, and what to do if you identify as one of those things. I am a psychotherapist and coach, just in case you haven't listened to this podcast before, and I get to help people all day long on their family building journey, both from a mental health perspective, that's all of my training, and, new training, actually, in the spiritual field. So, like crystals and oracle cards, and I'm learning about tarot cards now, and I learned last year, July 2020, that I am a medium. I pretty much knew that for many, many years, but I only put it into practice last year, July 2020. So now I get to do that, talk to spirit baby realm all the time, which is probably my most favorite thing to do of late. I don't know that I would have noticed that I can do this kind of work without really embracing the fact that I am a highly sensitive person and an empath. And so this is another reason why I wanted to talk about this today, because I just got to hang out for 2 months with a most beautiful group of women in Spirit Baby Foundation's training, live training that I did starting in October through November. And every single one of them can identify as highly sensitive or an empathic person. And it was just such a great feeling to be around people who get me and whom I get, and we all got one another. It was just really, really fun. So I wanted to talk about this more in depth today, also because I don't think I've really talked about it in depth. But there's also a new book that came out by Anita Moorjani. If you have not read Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to Be Me, it is out of this freaking world. That's her first book. It is about her near-death experience from stage 4, it's end-stage cancer. She actually died and then came back and was completely healed. And of course, she's a medical anomaly and physicians don't understand what happened. But she does from a non-medical perspective. And anyway, it's a fantastic book. Amazing. Please pick it up. So she did come out with a new book called Sensitive is the New Strong. And that title makes my heart beat because I often tell people who are highly sensitive that they have a superpower. And at first, it's not quite clear why I believe that. But then when I do explain it, it becomes clear. So I want to talk about that with you today. Okay, but first, of course, let's make some announcements. This is December of 2021, and from now until the end of December, so that is 11:59 p.m. on New Year's Eve, Pacific Standard Time, my entire shop is 25% off using code Holiday Spirit. So you just go to drmariarothenberger.com/shop. Everything from big ticket things like full coaching packages and spirit baby sessions down to the smallest things like meditations are all 25% off for the rest of the year. Now, heads up, in 2022, my pricing, everything in my shop is going to increase. And so I have this thing right now where if you get on my newsletter, just go to drmariarothenberger.com and there's a little box there to sign up for my newsletter. If you are on my newsletter, I will be sending you information about booking any kind of sessions that you want, but don't feel you can afford right now. And you can book them up to 6 months in advance with a credit card, which will be charged the day of your session up to 6 months from now. And you will still get 2021 pricing On top of that, if you book within the next few weeks through the end of December 2021, you will get 25% off of 2021 pricing. So, freaking huge deal. You're welcome to it. I'm glad to offer it. There it is. So you just get on my mailing list, drmariarothenberger.com. Scroll down a bit. You'll see the box there to enter your name and email address. And I will be sending out emails through the month with information on how to book a future session and not be charged for it until the day of your session with 25% off 2021 pricing. Okay. Plus, I do a lot of fun stuff like giveaways and shit. Like, it's fun. Get on my list. It's fun. Anyway, let's talk about now highly sensitive people and empaths. Also, we can throw in introverts in there too. I think that that's an interesting part of this topic and one that might surprise you. So let's just talk first about what these things are. So what is a highly sensitive person? I did not know that I was a highly sensitive person until, 10 years ago. I hadn't even heard of the idea. There is a fabulous website, hsperson.com. Dr. Elaine Aronson is the person who began researching this concept a few decades ago now and has a lot of research behind it. And you can go to her website, again, hsperson.com, and complete a quiz or an inventory to see whether or not you might be highly sensitive. I love it. It's great. I use it all the time with clients. And basically, what a highly sensitive person is, and this is, again, very basic. You want to go to the website and look up more. A highly sensitive person is one who feels things and experiences things in the world pretty intensely, more intensely than a non-HSP. So lights are brighter, sounds are louder, they'll have tactile issues like clothes are itchy or things like that. Now, can you have those experiences and not be an HSP? Absolutely. But usually an HSP has all of these all together. Then there's the one extra component that is quite different from other people. And that is that a highly sensitive person can generally pick up on other people's emotional state. So they'll be able to walk into a room and tell if somebody has just had an argument or if there is joy in the room. They'll be able to sense it, pick up on it. They'll be able to know, not just by visual cues, like they can be blindfolded and still pick up on the energy in the room. That is being a highly sensitive person. You might hear when you were a kid, oh, you're too sensitive. You need to stop being so emotional. You stop being dramatic. You might have heard things like that when you were young, maybe even now. And that is because you might be a highly sensitive person. There are many other things to look at, but if you heard things like that, it might be because you're highly sensitive. And I find that this is important for people to know because this is not a mental health condition. It's not a problem. It's not an issue. It is a personality characteristic that is genetic. And so it might also be in your biological family. This actually reminds me, just recently, this is December, as I said, 2021. We just had Thanksgiving, and my sister came out in the kitchen where I was and told me, hey, I just went to use mom's restroom and she's lying on her bed reading a book. Meanwhile, there's a whole house full of people. And I'm like, yep, that is a highly sensitive person. That is someone who needs to retreat for a little bit and then, settle nerves. And then you can reintroduce yourself back into the mess and the crazy and the loud and all that. My mom has not learned how to create boundaries and help her high sensitivity because I don't think that she considers herself highly sensitive. But, she's not going to listen to me. I'm just her daughter, even though I might know a little, a thing or two about it. But yeah, that's what a highly sensitive person tends to do. We need to retreat more. It takes us longer to wind down from a really busy, hectic day. We tend to get more easily overwhelmed by stimuli. If I know that I freak out when I have dogs who are hungry, my husband wants to know what's for dinner, and my kids are screaming in the background, playing around, wrestling, whatever. If there's too much going on, I have to freaking leave, or I have to tell people to please settle so I can think. It's pretty overwhelming at times. So there's actually a documentary called Sensitive with Alanis Morissette. She's one of the main interviewees in there. And she talks about a time when she had friends over her house and she retreated to her bedroom closet and just sat in there to prevent the overwhelm, or to help the overwhelm that she was feeling. And she actually wrote a beautiful song in that closet. So that's a great documentary to check out too, Sensitive. I think that's a place that you can start as well if you don't want to read the book, The Highly Sensitive Person. Okay, so about, I believe the statistic is about 20% of the population, the world's population, is highly sensitive, and half and half, male, female, doesn't matter. And a large majority of people are introverts. So you can be extroverted and be a highly sensitive person, but the majority are introverts. So I think that statistic is like 70% or something. Now, please don't quote me on this. Please go do your own research, but I believe that's what it is. Okay, so that's what a highly sensitive person is. Now, what is an empath? An empath, I was actually recently schooled on this myself because I'm thinking, yeah, what is the difference? Because I think that all highly sensitive people are empaths. Well, not true. According to Dr. Judith Orloff, who talks about being an empath a lot, her work is around being empathic. She says that a person that is an empathic person actually has all the characteristics of a highly sensitive person, but instead of just noting others' feelings, like tuning into others' energies and being aware of their feelings, empaths absorb those feelings. So according to Judith, Dr. Orloff, she says that a highly sensitive person can walk into a room of angry people and feel that people are angry and just note it. They're able to observe it and like, okay, that's happening. An empathic person will walk into a room, notice that people are angry, and then take on the anger themselves. They will start feeling angry. That is, according to Dr. Orloff, the difference between a highly sensitive person and an empath. I'm still doing research on that, but it does make sense to me that that would be the difference. I am absolutely also an empath. I tend to absorb others' emotions. If my husband is pissed off, as he would say, I'm pissed off, I tend to feel pissed off too, even though that thing doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me as Maria, but I feel the pissed offness. And I'll start feeling what he's feeling. I'll also feel it from animals, even like nonverbal beings. I will feel it from. If I have an old dog. You might, if you follow me on social media, you'll see Dexter all over the place. We call him Monkey. He's a little miniature red long-haired dachshund. He is old. He's 15, and so he's kind of, painful sometimes and cranky. And I will actually feel it. I will feel it in my body even. And I will also feel when he's joyful or tired, or I don't ever feel sadness from him, but I do feel like exhaustion or tired or kind of irritability. I'll feel his emotions and then I'll start feeling that myself. And I'll be like, where in the heck is this coming from? Nothing's upsetting. And then I'll be like, oh, it's the dog. Or, oh, it's my husband. Or, oh, it's so-and-so. That's one thing that I think is useful to know if you are a highly sensitive person or an empath, because then you can start realizing these things in yourself, create boundaries and create an awareness and move from there, as opposed to moving forward, say, being angry, not knowing why you're angry. You can create a boundary and a separation and be like, oh, that's not my, it doesn't originate from me, so I can move forward and find my peace again. And I'll talk about one simple, very simple technique to do that in a minute. Okay, so that is the difference between being a highly sensitive person and an empath. There's about 20% of the population, the world population, is a highly sensitive person. And a small percentage of those 20% of people are empaths. Now, empaths are also able to pick up on very subtle energy. And this is something that's a little bit esoteric, a little bit difficult to describe. This is how I connect to spirit baby realm and to energies on the other side, because it's subtle. You really have to be in a quiet state or a still state, unless that energy is quite strong. If you listen to my quote coming out podcast episode back in July 2020, where I talk about doing spirit baby communication work, I talked about how my first experience with babies from the other side, they were twins, but one of them was extremely strong, and he would not freaking leave me alone. So it didn't matter that I wasn't really tuning into subtle energy, because he was freaking loud. He wasn't subtle at all. But spirit baby realm and other, just other side of the veil energies are quite subtle. And so empaths are really gifted, or really skilled, I like to say, at picking up on those subtle energies. Now, what you do with them is the next step. Once you realize, oh, I've got this sensitivity, I've got this empathic skill, then you can hone it, build on it, and it takes a little bit to trust that what's coming through is accurate and real. But over time, you begin to, with practice and with the evidence, you begin to realize that, oh, this is actually happening. There's just too much, coincidental, evidence out there, even though I don't think there's any such thing as coincidence. I think it's all synchronicity. But you'll start noticing things like that. Like, how could I have possibly known that was going to happen? So that's one thing that you'll need to look into if you are indeed an empath, is subtle energy, picking up on subtle energy. Now, okay, what do you do if you are a highly sensitive person, and especially if you're an empath, and you begin picking up on people's emotional states and or absorbing people's emotional states? There is one technique that I use all the time. It is so simple. It is deceptively simple, but it's so effective. So this is what I do. When I start feeling a certain emotion that is kind of surprising to me, like, where did this come from? Why am I all of a sudden so exhausted and I can't really figure out what the trigger might be? Because sometimes, I'll feel really tired in the afternoon. It's probably, a vitamin imbalance, or I don't know what it is, but I'll know that it's from me. But what you can do is ask yourself internally a very simple question. And that question is this mine? Now, a highly sensitive person and an empath will be able to tell immediately that if there is a lightening up, if there's a shift in your energy that lightens you a little bit, that means that thing, those emotions, are not yours, and you can gently give them back to whomever they came from. If you know who they came from, great. If you don't know who they came from, great. It does not matter. You internally say, okay, I felt that lightening up within me. I know that this emotional state does not belong to me. I gently give it back and bless the person and hope that they're able to take care of it and process through it okay. I am creating a boundary right now for me, shielding myself in peacefulness so that that emotion can't come back to me. And then you will begin to feel more peaceful and more balanced and more regulated. Now, if you ask yourself that question, is this mine? And you have no shift or you feel worse, that emotion is probably yours. And so you then know what to do. Okay. If you, for example, feel anxious and you ask, is this mine? And the anxiety stays the same or gets worse. Okay. Thank you. It's mine. And then you pull in all your skills for anxiety, right? Which, oh my gosh, go back and listen to this entire podcast because there are so many things that you can do for anxiety. I'll tell you what my go-to is. I love the HeartMath Institute research too. This is a perfect example of me going from evidence, sciencey things to these very esoteric topics, right? This is exactly where I live. So I love finding evidence and reading research and seeing what people come up with to marry the two realms of science and spirituality, because I do think they're coming closer and closer and closer. I write all about it in my book, Transcending Infertility. So I go immediately to breath work through the HeartMath Institute. And it's very simple. Let me just explain it first, then I'll say what I physically do. So it's very simple. You inhale for the count of 5 and you exhale for the count of 5, intentionally focusing your attention on your heart space. Now what I do physically is I put my hands on my heart because that helps me bring my awareness and my attention to my heart space. And then I intentionally slow my breath down, my breathing down to the count of 5 in, to the count of 5 out. And I just slowly repeat that. And it usually takes about a minute, really 60 seconds, for me to feel, I am now more regulated. In HeartMath Institute speak, it's called being heart coherent or having heart coherence. And it's so interesting. When I've done this in my office with folks, there is a biofeedback software that we use, and you can see the difference on the screen of when somebody is incoherent and when somebody is coherent. It's the graph looks very smooth and very symmetrical waves of lines on the graph itself when somebody is heart coherent, and when somebody is heart incoherent, it's very jagged and kind of random and all over the place. The research has shown that when people are heart coherent, they are more likely to experience positive affect. So that's positive emotion, happiness, joy, peace, contentment. And then, of course, the opposite is true, or vice versa is what I mean. So that is my go-to practice for anxiety. It's literally 60 seconds. Now, because I do feel like for me, it's only 60 seconds because I do it so much that my brain and my body have learned that practice equals peacefulness and stability and calm. But it does take a little while to get there. It just requires practice like anything. Like I talked with my students in the Spirit Baby Foundations training, that they were learning very foundational information for connecting with the Spirit Baby realm. And it takes practice to hone that skill. That is the same thing for all of these mental health skills. If you see a mental health counselor and they're giving you skills, please do not try them once and then expect them to work, or try them once and they don't work and then discount them and say, oh, that didn't work, I need something else. No, you do need to continually try these skills out and teach your brain, teach your body that is what that's the state that you are trying to achieve through these skills. And then the length of time that it takes to get to that, say, heart coherent place gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's what I do for anxiety. That's my go-to. But man, there are so many things that you can do for anxiety. Just Dr. Google up grounding exercises and you'll see. Another favorite of mine is just when it's really bad, when I have a really big feeling of overwhelm or worry or anxiety, I just lay flat on the floor. Lay flat on the floor. It is literally grounding your body. And so there's two parts to this. This is why I like this one. The sciencey part is that you literally feel supported by the ground, which reduces anxiety. The more esoteric, quantum physical thing is that, actually this is part science too, is that we begin to tune into the Earth's energy. The Earth does emit its own energy. There's the sciencey part. And when our bodies align with that energy, we feel more stable and grounded. So there's both points of view. I believe that they are part of the same spectrum. So I like to give you both. All right. So that is what you can do when you are feeling overwhelmed by other people's stuff, by loud noises, by bright lights, by big feelings, especially other people's feelings. Start by creating that boundary. And if it is your own stuff, then you can pull in your other skills, your anxiety skills, your depression skills, all these great grounding techniques that are out there for those moments. Now, there is one thing that I want to say about connecting with other people about your high sensitivity or your empathic abilities. And that is, people tend to say things like you're too sensitive, or you need to calm down, or God, stop being so dramatic. That's not such a big deal. And I think it's really important. This is that superpower thing that I wanted to address. I think it's really important to be clear with people about your own boundaries, and you can offer, a bit of education on it, but I don't think that's as important as setting clear boundaries with people. Hey, listen, I don't really appreciate being called too sensitive or drama. I think that I am perfectly sensitive. I believe it's a beautiful thing. I use it for good all the time, and I know how to take care of myself. Now, there will come a time when that doesn't bother you anymore because you feel so solid in who you are. You feel so solid in this skill that you have of tuning into other people and creating energetic boundaries and verbal boundaries and physical boundaries and all that. You feel so good at that, and you feel so good about who you are that what people say and how they act around you really doesn't matter nearly as much, because you're able to create these beautiful boundaries within yourself and outside of yourself. So in the beginning, you can set these clear verbal boundaries with people, expect them to kind of freak out because you're being a new version of yourself. And they're like, what? That we don't understand this new boundary setting thing. That's okay. So it might escalate for a little bit, but you just stay steady and you keep doing the same thing, and you keep showing up and setting those boundaries, those clear limits. And eventually they will move into that new space of, knowing the new you. And continue doing the internal work. That is researching and identifying with these different ways of being. Pick up Anina Moorjani's Sensitive is the New Strong. Pick up The Highly Sensitive Person. Watch the documentary Sensitive. I think there's also a new book, or maybe it's a movie called Sensitive in Love. So being a highly sensitive person in a romantic relationship. There is so much information out there. Learn about who you are and how you function in this world so that you can come to scenarios with utter confidence, and what people say just doesn't bother you anymore. And when you have a giant Thanksgiving feast and there are 19 people in your house, like my mom had over the Thanksgiving holiday, you won't need to retreat into the bedroom to read a book as much because you'll be able to create these boundaries. Now, I also had to do that during the time. It took me a lot longer to get there because I create energetic boundaries now. But I needed to go out with I took my ukulele out to the front porch where it was nice and cool. It was a different temperature out there. So I felt I was cooled down, and I started just slowly, quietly strumming my ukulele. And that helped me settle a little bit as a highly sensitive person and an empath. Of course, then my husband followed me out, and then my sister-in-law, and then my brother and my nephew, and 3 kids all followed me out onto this tiny little porch, and we're all hanging out. But I had reset in a way, so it was okay. That's the other thing. It doesn't take as long to reset. It took me maybe 5 minutes of quietly strumming my ukulele and being in the coolness of the night air before I felt like, okay, I'm recharged now. I can do this. This is great. So, all right. Please, I encourage you to read up more on these topics. I think it's really important to be able to function well, especially in the fertility world, when you are dealing with so much input and so many different personalities from your team, your care team. If you are doing treatments, it's really important to be able to create this energetic boundary so you're not absorbing other people's shit, and you can self-advocate too. Very, very, very important. Okay, my friend, I hope that this information has been useful for you today. And if you are or know someone who is a highly sensitive person or an empath or an introvert, introversion is a different thing. But a lot of highly sensitive people and empaths are introverted. If you know of people or are yourself one of these things, I hope you have a better sense of what you might do to move through the world and your life, being more empowered and taking care of yourself a little bit better as a highly sensitive person or empath. And if you like this podcast, please consider giving a star rating or a verbal feedback or written feedback on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. If you're listening on YouTube, please hit subscribe and like and all that stuff, so other people can get the same good content. And don't forget to head on over to drmariarothenberger.com and sign up for my newsletter so you can get 25% off the entire shop for the rest of 2021 and 2021 pricing for the next 6 months in advance if you are on my newsletter. All right. Take care and be well.